What can you do to close a client who's been engaging with you? Maybe those are meetings and emails back and forth, and suddenly they're starting to drag their feet. What do you do in that situation, and how can you move them to make a decision? That is the question that my client messaged me with just recently. So for context, I work with VIP clients. We have incredible sessions once a week. And then in between, we utilize something called Voxer, which essentially turns your phone into a walkie talkie. So I can coach them live. I mean, they kind of have Katie in their pocket, so to speak. And sometimes those clients need help and support, and it might be really urgent. And today I got a message from an incredible client, Sara Allred. She is amazing, an exceptional business coach. And Sara, like a good coach should, knows where she's an expert and where and when she's not. She knows how to stay in her lane. And so today she messaged me, not with a question about herself, but on behalf of a client. And every once in a while, a client will do this. Hey, I've got a question that one of my clients is running into. I'd love your insight and your input and your intelligence on this. So today I got a message from Sara about one of her clients. And she has a potential client who has samples of the product, who has been emailing her back and forth and is now not just dragging their feet, but has also mentioned that they are getting bids from some of her competitors. So what do we do in this kind of a situation? Now, you have potential clients that you engage with, that you go back and forth with, and at some point you will run into this with some potential client. And the question becomes, how do we answer their questions, but not come off needy and desperate? And in fact, stay in a position of power and strength and confidence. That's kind of the nuance of where we all want and need to be. And this is where Sara's client found herself. And she was trying to walk that very thin line of answering their questions, but not being needy and desperate and chasing after them. Because the moment you do that, by the way, you push somebody away. So you can't chase after them. So how do we walk that very thin line and have them coming to us? So you're about to hear several short, but very punchy and super tactical and specific responses to Sara. And anytime I say she, it's her client. And honestly, I don't even know the client's name. We're just going to call her Tiffany. But anytime you hear me saying she, I'm talking about Sara's client. And I want you just to imagine that the she is you having a conversation with a potential client or customer, and you'll find really cool and very specific tactics, tools, and very specific words and phrases that have your client go from being in a place of indecision to actually turning around and chasing you. This is always my golden objective. It's a more powerful position. So how can you get people to come to you? Hey, Sara. Yeah, so they are hung up in the space of, I don't know, and there's probably multiple decision makers and summer travel. I wonder if the most effective thing to do would be for you to offer to get on the phone with them and actually help them find that answer, as a coach, help them come to that resolution, whether it's pursuing something else. That's awesome and great. But I wonder if you setting a time to get on the phone with them would kind of create a deadline, because right now they don't have a deadline. They know they need to make a decision. They're trying to coordinate internally. They're trying to make some big decisions on where the company places their bets, so to speak. And if you could come in a very unbiased way, which most people probably wouldn't trust that, honestly. I know I'm capable of it. I know you are too. But it's really rare. And so they might have a hard time trusting that. But I wonder if you even just offering that to get on the phone and help them identify what their values are, what their North Star is, where they want to head, and then what would line up with that, because that's what they need to figure out. And you could kind of play a role to help them identify that. And then if it makes sense for you guys to work from then on out together, that's awesome and great. And if it doesn't make sense, you'll at least know that, and you won't be wasting your time. They won't be wasting your time as well. So I could see that as a really awesome option. And I would try and get them on the phone ASAP, because you don't want this to drag out. So see if you can get them on the phone. What's today? Tuesday? Could you get them on the phone this week? I think it would need to be at least a 60-minute call. And then from there, you can make a decision, and both of you can move on or move forward. she needs to find out from him what, and he might not even know the answer to this. And this is why she needs to ask this question. What would he need to see in order to determine who's the right fit for him? He needs to figure that out, because that will then help him differentiate between her and somebody else. And once he shares that with her, she can decide whether or not that's something she's willing to include, or maybe it's something that is already there and they haven't discussed it, but she needs to identify that thing. There's something he probably hasn't defined within himself that will determine who he's going to move forward with. And so by her asking that question, she can then immediately answer and engage with him specific to that thing that's holding him up, which again is probably undefined right now. And by her asking that question, he'll define it, and then she can answer that question. And then she needs to do it in a way where she's not needy and desperate, and like she's positioning herself as she's not needy and desperate of him, and she's there to help him answer his question. She's there to answer his questions. So I'm trying to think, there's potentially some phrases and that she could say that would like demonstrate her non-neediness and non-desperation, and have her stand in her power and her strength as she engages with him. So let me think of a couple of those phrases. I can honestly feel the energy right now of that. I think it's just something really simple, like supporting his research and supporting him looking around, supporting him making price comparison and service comparisons. So like, you know, when you have a potential client that you're talking to and somebody says something like, you know, this sounds great and awesome, I'm in, I just need to talk to my spouse. And your response would be something like, I think that's awesome, you need alignment with your spouse. And so it's kind of similar. I think the fact that you're doing your research is awesome, and I fully support that. And I think if you're anything like the people who have ended up becoming our customers, you'll find that we're the best or something like that. So supporting the fact that he's doing research, supporting the fact that he is getting bids from other similar companies, and standing in confidence in what it is that she specializes in. I think that's a really powerful approach.
Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. And if you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardsson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
And Sarah, keep in mind, a lot of times the thing that pushes people over the edge is a very human, emotional component of the sale. So because this corporation, these CEOs are considering hiring her, what does that mean for them in their personal life? Maybe it's the fact that they don't have to worry about, what are potentially some emotional fears, worries, concerns that individual has, that by hiring your client, that's taken care of and they no longer have to worry about that. It's that kind of thing that can be really helpful. Let me think of an example that I can share with you. Okay, this is a really good example. And let me think about this and make it more specific to her. But it's this phrase of what this means for you. And that's where you start to transition into the emotional one. And a friend of mine gave a really good example. He's a fundraiser and he manages funds. And so he's talking to investors. And one of his favorite phrases is, what this means for you is you'll be able to retire in 5 years and you'll finally be able to spend time with your family. Okay, so this is speaking to an investor who's probably a workaholic, who's been working way too much and not spending time with his family. And so if you invest with me, I'll give you the kind of return that will allow you to retire in 5 years and spend time with your son. So can you see how what this means for you and how that makes that emotional connection? So if she has any information on their personal life, like that's where this comes in and it's super powerful. So what this means for you is, and what is that thing maybe outside of work that has meaning and significance to him or her specifically, and how can she make a connection between the products and services that she's rendering and that outcome that they want that has emotional significance. So again, the phrase is what this means for you is, and making a connection between her services and what they emotionally want. And one last thing that she could add on top of that, and she could say it like this, one final note, and she could share a case study or a client testimonial that also is a reminder of that human element and is kind of proof of her delivering on her promises. And even going for the ask. Like, if everything checks out, when would you like to get started? I think when somebody's kind of between two people, the one who's going to win ultimately is the one who makes the ask. So if this all checks out, when would you like to get started? That will help them go from the place of inaction, research, to making a commitment. So at the end of the day, rather than trying to, quote, sell this individual, she's got to clearly identify what's the problem he's trying to solve, including whatever's causing him to drag his feet right now. And rather than selling, just approach that problem and solve that problem. And if you do that, that's the person who ends up getting the check.
My hope is that the coaching that happened in today's episode was not just for Sara Allred and her client, but it was also for you. So how can you capture these words and phrases, these positionings, powerful positionings, so that you have your ideal clients and customers turning around and coming after you? And if you want to learn more about Sara Allred and her business, I've got a link for you down below. Go check her out. She's awesome. Hey, thanks for listening. I am sitting here so curious to know, what is your greatest takeaway from today's episode? We talked about a lot of things, and my hope is something in particular is really popping up for you. And if you heard my message in the middle of today's episode and you're wondering, hey, Katie, how can you help me get more done in the next 90 days than most people do all year? I'm going to invite you to go to that website, now.katierichardson.com/case study. I have 8 incredible VIP clients who have been so generous to share their stories of the problems that they were facing when they first met me and what they have been able to do because of the formulas, the systems, the processes that I have taught them as they have learned this art of showing up powerfully in their business. So go find the entrepreneur who's most like you, who's going to inspire you to see new possibility. And if you so feel inclined, I'm going to invite you to go to the next page where you're going to see a 6-minute video, and I show you the secret behind the work that I'm doing with these incredible entrepreneurs. It might surprise you. So go watch that video. And then if you feel so inclined, fill out an application, because you and I will hop on the phone and we'll have one of the most impactful conversations you have potentially ever had in your life. I've had a client say, Katie, that call was priceless. And I was like, cool. Can you at least name a price? And he said, at least it was worth $10,000. So you have an opportunity to qualify for that if you fill out an application, if you qualify and meet the minimum requirements. And please, by all means, keep listening. I'll see you in the next episode, and keep being awesome.